2005's War of the Worlds, directed by the legendary Steven Spielberg and starring Tom Cruise, a film everyone remembers primarily for Tom Cruise running away from alien tripods and its infamous ending. The film is highly regarded for its effects and scary visuals and for its brilliant first half, but the second half is seen as sloppy and half-baked, especially with Robbie's impossible survival after this. But is this film really that bad, or is there a lot more depth to this film? Is this film Steven Spielberg's misfire, or is this an underrated masterpiece? Or something in the middle? Is 2005's War of the Worlds a broken masterpiece? To start things off, it's important to note that this is Spielberg's third film about extraterrestrials, beginning first with Close Encounters of the Third Kind and the iconic E.T. For Spielberg's third venture into the unknown, he wanted to tell a story with scary aliens this time, with malicious intent for mankind. And what better story to adapt than H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds, which was what really kicked off the alien invasion genre in the first place. Of course, The War of the Worlds had already been adapted into a film 50 years prior with George Pals and Byron Haskins' 1953 classic, but The War of the Worlds is the perfect timeless story to adapt into any time, from the original novel's own anti-colonialism message and to the previously mentioned 1953 film's metaphorical fears around the Cold War and nuclear weapons. And after the devastating tragedy that was 9/11, a tragedy that made the public no longer feel safe and vulnerable to the unknown, the climate was right for another adaptation of H.G. Wells' classic story. But of course there have been many alien invasion films over the previous decades which spawned many tropes and cliches that screenwriter David Koepp smartly chose to steer clear of to create a truly fresh take on the genre whilst updating the novel to the 21st century. It was decided to have the story strictly follow the perspective of one man. Similar to the novel, but unlike the novel, the story would follow a father trying to keep his children safe during the apocalyptic event. To play the role of the father, Tom Cruise was cast as Ray Faria after he worked with Spielberg on Minority Report. In fact, it was Tom Cruise and Spielberg who helped conceptualize a lot of the story itself.
No one would have believed in the early years of the 21st century that our world was being watched by intelligences greater than our own.
The film begins with Morgan Freeman's take on the iconic opening narration from the book, which helps set up the film's foreboding tone. After this, we're introduced to Tom Cruise's character, Ray Faria, a dock worker living in New Jersey who apparently owns a car that he really shouldn't be so reckless with.
The absolute cherry 1966 Shelby GT350H Mustang Fastback with a 289 CID Cobra V8 engine making 106 horsepower and 329 foot-pounds of torque. The GT350H, however, is special, with only 1,002 Hertz-style fastbacks actually made. It's exceedingly rare, and the car really goes for almost $300,000 on average at auction right now, with it going as high as $466,000 in one of the auctions. There's no way this dude has this car, and there's no way he's driving it like that in the Rust Belt, living where he is.
He's also a divorced father who has to take care of his kids, Robbie and Rachel, for the weekend, as their mother and Tim are visiting their grandparents. And unfortunately for them, Ray's house is filled with junk and is stocked up with little to no food, and he's not really that good at communicating either.
Just do your report. We don't send you to school so you can flunk out.
You don't pay for it, Tim does.
That's half what I got.
You're an asshole. Hate coming here.
Why you act like such a dick?
It's not how you're going to get through to him. If you want him to listen to you,
What are you? Your mother or mine?
Nor is he really that reliable. But you can tell he is trying and does care for his kids, especially later on in the film, and that is primarily the narrative of this film, witnessing this family dynamic react to the alien invasion and how that dynamic changes over time.
Okay, Rachel, this is your area. Okay, you are
Dad,
safe.
that's not how it goes.
You're not hungry either? Okay. Okay, it's fine. Fine. Everybody just relax, okay? We're here now, we're safe, we're gonna stay. And in the morning, Mom and Tim are gonna be here, and everything's gonna be fine, okay?
In the basement. Do we need balls? We go back there, find one of those things, and kill it.
Why don't you just let me make the big decisions, okay?
Which will be when? Never, right? Never about your speed.
Okay, hey, enough of the Ray shit, all right? It's Dad,
Don't
sir,
fight.
or if you want, Mr. Ferrier. That sounds a little weird to me, but you decide.
You want to come off all wise and shit? You only chose Boston because you hope Mom's there, and if she's there, you can dump us on her. You can dump us on her, and then you only have to care about yourself, which is exactly the way you like it.
Rachel, played brilliantly by Dakota Fanning, is the brightest of the three,
What's the capital of Australia?
It's what my brother knows.
but is easily the most frightened.
Ray, get out of the car!
Get in, Manny, or you're gonna die.
Okay. In the car, Ray.
I'm not gonna get in.
Okay, put him up, Rach. Make the arms. This space, this is yours. This belongs to you, right?
Yes.
You're safe in your space.
I'm safe in my
You're
space.
safe in your space. Nothing can happen to you in your space. Okay. I'm gonna go to the front seat. I'm gonna talk to Dad.
No.
I'll be like 2 feet away, okay?
Okay.
Will you hold my hand?
Yes.
Will you hold my hand?
Yes.
You gonna be okay?
Yes.
So it's more tragic when she is basically an emotionless husk at the end.
Rachel! 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 Rachel!
Then there's Robbie, played brilliantly by Justin Chatwin, who is very dismissive and rebellious towards his father, but as the film goes on, he becomes more and more radicalized after witnessing the alien attacks, wishing to fight back against the invaders with the army, and with a strong desire to be a hero. Which does show him off to actually have a kind heart, but he's also very arrogant and reckless. The film does a great job at establishing these characters and their dynamic together. I know a lot of people take issue with Robbie and Rachel, but I personally don't at all. They are both acted extremely well, so I genuinely see them as real people who would react in this way. The same applies to Ray. It's all acted brilliantly. The film also does a great job at foreshadowing and eventually building up to the invasion itself.
EMP here was followed by seismic activity on the scale of an earthquake, measuring 6.5 on the Richter scale. Electromagnetic storm.
Storms were tracked.
First with TV reports, then an impossible storm, abnormal lightning, and then all the electronics and even clocks are disabled, which is also a direct callback to the 1953 classic.
That's funny, the phone's not on the same circuit as the lights.
What are they saying, honey? Something's wrong with my hearing aid.
Followed by this extremely tense and amazing sequence as the first of many tripods emerge from the ground and begin the assault on mankind. And from here on out, the story is strictly about survival until the aliens eventually die off, taking us from incredible set piece to incredible set piece. But what really elevates this film is the impeccable cinematography and shots, which is consistently amazing throughout the whole experience, especially this long car scene that goes a full 360 around the car.
Where are we going?
We gotta go. We got maybe like the only working car around here. I'm not stopping until we're clear of it.
Clear of what? What the hell is going on?
You saw we're under attack!
By who? Who is attacking us?
The sound design is also just incredible, from the booming howls from the tripods and really just about everything. The soundtrack by John Williams is also great and does a good job at adding tension. Or even triumphant victory.
John is writing the music in a semi-vacuum. When he first sat down to watch the movie, I only had 6 to 12 reels complete, so he could only see 6 reels. So he saw 60 minutes of the movie and began writing. He never saw the last 60 minutes of the movie. But he said that he had enough of an experience in the first 60 minutes that he knew exactly how to write it.
To go in War of the Worlds where you have these machines coming that bring the aliens here that are so destructive, it creates a different musical opportunity and a different role for the orchestra and for the music. And there are a few sections in there, a few cuts to the alien machines where the orchestra does a grand gesture of the classic monster film. Well, the intersection scene where the alien machine first emerges is, I think, one of the most terrifying things I've ever seen.
It's certainly not as memorable as other John Williams scores, but it works with this film at building tension and the overall atmosphere. Lastly, there's the special effects. Either practical or digital, it is truly a sight to behold, and it still holds up today. And no way is this better exemplified than with the design and movement and just everything about the alien tripods themselves. They look absolutely incredible in this film, especially at night time with their searchlights all lit up. They truly feel alien with their tripod machines and their Lovecraftian array of metal tentacles and their almost aquatic aesthetic. And the way they move is both heavy but precise and graceful.
I wanted the tripods, number one, to be really scary because they're going to represent what's driving them. I wanted the audience to actually be terrified by what these things look like from the outside. So I had the most amazing group of computer graphic artists working on the design of the tripods.
We went back and researched all of the wealth of design interpretations that have been done to date. And part of it was to be conscious of what had been done, but also to steer away from that because we wanted to create something new and unique. And one of the great things that Steven wanted to do was to create something that was iconic, but yet still paid homage and tribute to the original story. And so the whole idea of three-legged was wonderful because then you had to start thinking about, well, why did they make it three-legged? You know, and so we had to think about different biology, different physiology of why they would perhaps make it like that, because obviously for us, we're sort of bipeds and quadrupeds. And then once you kind of do that homework, then it's really a matter of designing something aesthetically pleasing that looks and addresses sort of what the story needs are.
The original ideas that we had discussed about was that the tripods were pretty much mechanical, and they are mechanical. They're not a living thing at all. But as we got into it, started animating them and looking at them, they become a little more lifelike in their movements.
And picturing it in movement, these legs in a graceful flow, it's almost like watching a giraffe and you're not realizing how much ground it's actually covering because you're hypnotized by this wonderful motion. And then contrast that with, it could be lethal at the drop of a hat, you know, with the tentacles and everything. So I thought it was a wonderful character in that sense.
The lights coming off of it, the size certainly was all from the book, and we just took it there as a starting point and really made it able to act and react with its environment and with the human actors, basically.
The animation on this is pretty important to give a sense of sort of amazement and danger and humbleness to these creatures. Like there's nothing you can do, they're in control. You know, that's pretty neat that comes across in the film, and Randy's been really good at getting that in the animation and all.
And they also have these metal cages, which basically makes them the most accurate tripods to the book. These are definitely the best tripods. And lastly, there's the set design, which really shines on two main occasions. The scene with the crashed airline, and once the red weed comes into play, transforming our Earth into a terrifying crimson nightmare covered in thick and vile red vegetation that resembles nerves and blood vessels. And how are they fertilized? By drinking and spraying human blood.
They drink us.
Please.
They drink us.
They'll hear you.
And they spray us like fertilizer.
You gotta be quiet.
Drink us and
Gotta come back down
then they
here.
spit us out all the goddamn red wheat.
Even the aliens themselves are stunningly realized. Yes, they resemble the Independence Day aliens a bit too heavily, but they are still utilized to their fullest potential. They do come across as monstrous, but also curious, very curious, and they have a level of sociability between each other. You can buy these are intelligent beings that are organized and calculated, but entirely ruthless, regarding mankind as little as we regard animals, so can you really call them evil? And lastly, the film does a phenomenal job at showing how equally ruthless we humans can be to each other, becoming as ruthless and selfish as the aliens themselves. Which basically just shows how much humans are reliant on social order. Without this order, well, we pretty much just become animals. One of the best parts of the film is Tim Robbins' character, who is an obvious amalgamation of 3 characters from the book. The artilleryman, who in the book wishes to strike back against the aliens using the underground.
This tunnel will get us to the city. We'll have our own tunnels there, ready-made. Subway, see what I'm saying? We can hide a whole army down there. We'll go underground. Save the taxi night. You stop it! We're the resistance, Ray. They can't occupy this country. Occupations always fail. History's taught us that 1,000 times.
The curette, who goes insane after witnessing the aliens feeding on mankind.
Drink us and... Better come back down here. Spit us out all of the goddamn red wheat!
And lastly, taking the name Ogilvy from a character in the book who really has no relation because Ogilvy is an astronomer, but it still works here and it's a nice callback.
You're the greatest power in the world in a couple days. Walked right over us. And these are only the first. They'll keep coming. This is not a war any more than there's a war between men and maggots. This is an extermination. Been around death plenty. Drive an ambulance in the city. Drove an ambulance in the city. It's all over now, huh? You know the people that make it, right? The ones that don't flatline before the hospital? It's the ones that keep their eyes open. Keep looking at you. Keep thinking. They're the ones that survive. Can't lose our heads, right? Running. That's what'll kill you. And I'm dead set on living. Dead set on living. Not gonna be exterminated.
But to see this survivor, who is dead set on living, eventually crack and go mad, forcing Ray to kill him in cold blood so the aliens don't find him, chilling. So yes, altogether this film has a lot going for it. The cinematography, the music, the sound effects, and the amazing special effects. And of course its family dynamic and the exploration how mankind would react to a catastrophic invasion. And just the nightmarish visuals and the aliens themselves, it's all amazing. So how is this a broken masterpiece? The problems arise in the film when this happens to Robbie and he somehow survives at the end. And of course, most infamously, how the aliens were ultimately destroyed by germs and bacteria. Firstly, I'll talk about Robbie. How did Robbie survive this? One theory is that the aliens captured him, similar to what we see earlier in the film, but I don't buy this for 2 reasons. One, you can see flames engulfing the tripod here, so any humans in the cages would likely be killed. Yes, the explosion bypassed the shield. 2, the aliens are clearly in assault mode. You can see throughout the film that the aliens have 2 behavioral patterns. They either exterminate, or they search and capture humans. The aliens were clearly in assault mode during this scene, and even after the explosion. The only thing that makes sense is Robbie just got lucky. Maybe he hid under an armoured Humvee, or who knows. It's a shame as well, because I would have preferred if Robbie had survived, perhaps seeing how crazy Ogilvy was, and that helps him change into a more level-headed person, and it would be better if he became a more responsible person, similar to Ray's journey throughout the film, or if they just had the balls to kill him off. Now on to the aliens' defeat at the hands of the bacteria. Yes, this is accurate to the book's ending, and it's clear that the intention was for the story to have this poetic irony to it at the end.
It's quite extraordinary when you consider the era that H.G. was writing the original story, for him to come up with the solution of it being the common cold that kills off the alien invasion. Here's a thing which, if science could, it would eliminate the common cold, and what Wells is saying by using that as the ultimate denouement is everything in our world, all of the environment is related, and every part of it is necessary. So if we had managed to kill off the common cold, well, the aliens would have killed us. And for someone to have written that back at the end of the 19th century is quite extraordinarily prescient.
Despite all of man's technology and all of our courage and all of our hopefulness, what really saves us in the end are the most microscopic creatures alive on this planet today. And that was something I didn't want to lose.
The idea of bacteria destroying them when all our weapons failed is just a great irony. That which we take lightly and attempt to stamp out and never even think about and can't even see is much more powerful than our greatest weaponry. And the idea that nature in some way knows a hell of a lot more than we do, I think is an idea that will last forever.
But logically it just doesn't work. In the book, the aliens are on the brink of extinction with limited resources, and their manner of space travel, literal cannons launching pods into space, is very primitive. The aliens also come from Mars, a planet that yes is already known for being quite hostile and cold, but it's also much closer to Earth than the far depths of space. But the main thing is that it's highly suggested in the book that Mars either never developed microorganisms, or at least in the same way here on Earth, or the Martians eliminated the germs and bacteria a long time ago. So long ago that now, currently, they've forgotten they've even existed. So the ending in the book made more sense in context, as the Martians were far more primitive, less informed and desperate, so their demise at the hand of bacteria and germs works more. However, in the 2005 film, firstly, the aliens do not originate from Mars. They are from a much further distance than Mars, to say the least.
Well, Martians is not mentioned in my film because my aliens don't come from Mars. Our aliens come probably from as far away as E.T. came from, except they came from a darker part of the universe, whereas E.T. came from a rather benevolent planet.
The aliens have gone rogue, you know? They're rogue alien. It's E.T., man, but he's gone bad, you know? E.T.'s gone bad, he's rogue.
They also apparently buried their tripods, possibly thousands of years, and later returned to send pilots to each tripod using the lightning storms. So it's far less likely that a species that can do all of this is as disadvantaged as the Martians from the book, which makes the 2005's aliens defeat come across as illogical and kind of downright stupid. Still, theoretically this could still work. The aliens act almost identically to Wells's Martians, and we even briefly get to see the aliens' homeworld, a planet engulfed in the red weed. And in the book, Mars is said to be red thanks to the red weed. Obviously that isn't true in real life, but just go with it. So what if the aliens in the 2005 film are in fact the last remnants of a dying race that have fled to the stars in search for a new home, and perhaps Earth was the only suitable habitable world, but they needed a species to breed and feed upon, and to also fertilize their main supply of food, the red weed. So they decided to plant their tripods and wait for the right time to strike the Earth. Once humanity had blossomed into high enough numbers, perhaps the aliens were lurking in the dark depths of the solar system in a place they couldn't be spotted, but the main point is, on their homeworld, microorganisms did not evolve the same way, which led to their unknowing downfall when they finally attacked the Earth. Still, you'd think that they would realize this in those thousands of years, so it's not perfect. Answers is still very contrived. So is this film a broken masterpiece because of its illogical shortcomings? It depends on how damning you find these issues to be. I do think the film is not as great as it could have been, but what we have here is still an extremely well made film with well acted characters, effects, music, premise and whatnot. It's a perfect adaptation of the book, bringing it into the 21st century, I think. The cinematography and visuals really make this shine, and in my opinion it definitely holds up today, and I think it'll stand the test of time. I'd certainly recommend watching this film either for the first time or giving it another shot, and I'd even recommend watching the behind the scenes featurettes, because it really shows into detail every facet of this film. But really now, the best thing about this film for me is just the enthusiasm and genuine passion from Spielberg and Cruise. The War of the Worlds is my favourite story in fiction, and to see it adapted so lovingly and passionately by such talented and skilled people who bring so much passion and care into the craft just makes this film a masterpiece for me anyways. In fact, it was this very film that made me so passionate for War of the Worlds in the first place, and I can see why all these years later upon a rewatch. I definitely give this film a 9.5 out of 10. It's one of my favourite films of all time, and I honestly believe it's very underrated.
Now, in the shadow of 9/11, it felt that War of the Worlds had a special significance. I mean, this film, it touches mostly on how this much catastrophe can bring about that much healing. But, you know, our world has gone through a lot of growing pains, and we're in a whole different mindset. So for the most part, I think I made the picture because I thought that this story's time had come again.
You know, Minority Report was a dream come true for me to be able to work with Steven Spielberg. I grew up watching his movies, studying his movies. You know, I often tease him, I know your movies better than you do. But we'd finished Minority Report, and we sat there and we said, okay, so what are we going to do next together? And he mentioned 3 movies, and War of the Worlds was the third one, and we both looked at each other, and the lights went on, and we said, oh, you know, that's it. There was, you know, tremendous excitement, and then that day we just put it together and said, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to make this movie together. And then Steven's worked with David Koepp before, a great writer, and I've worked with David Koepp before. And the 3 of us just sat down in January and talked about the story. And I wanted to play a father in a movie and have, you know, a character. I like the, you know, blue-collar character. I lived in Jersey twice. The world is basically coming to an end, and what is he going to do? That challenge of a guy who has really only thought about himself, and now at this point he has to become that friend. He must become that parent, or they're not going to make it. It's you know, the story is, are they going to make it?
Before I end this video, I want to express how this film made me feel, and it's something that has struck with me for years, and something that I've re-encountered again, so to speak, whilst rewatching it for this video. And that is just how ruthless and selfish mankind became, becoming as cold as the aliens themselves. And the sheer fact it was bacteria and germs that saved mankind just gives the film this disturbing edge to it. Like, it's almost brutally honest about the universe we happen to live in, and just how cold and materialistic it is. It shows us just how cold and deadly the world really is, and it just distills this deep subconscious existential dread. But it kind of works because, in a way, the film's message is that the only thing that's truly worth living and fighting for is family and love. Without these qualities of life, what's even the point unless you're a self-serving organism?
You know, great science fiction has tremendous characters and is still relevant. You know, when the classic pieces of science fiction are still relevant because it hits universal human themes.
It is a cautionary tale, in a way. You know, we're far more dangerous to ourselves than the, you know, huge extraterrestrial invaders. It's quite profound. And therefore, what's in your heart and what's in your soul, in your family and your children, and being the best father or mother or brother or sister that you can be, that's what counts.